Nicole Otto is a mental health counselor and a self-taught artist in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin area. She grew up as a competitive figure skater with her brother in a family that nurtured a love for self-actualization, compassion, and the arts. Nicole uses these life lessons to make change in government mental health programs in schools to foster creativity in clients and to advocate for positive community development. She has also created a growth mindset program designed to teach kids about the mind and the ability to turn their brains through effort and resilience. Nicole's main objective is to create positive, lasting change in our corner of the world and to help inspire and empower others to do the same. And in today's episode of Auto Interview, it's my joy, pleasure, excitement, and honor to have on the show today, Nicole Otto. How are you doing today, Nicole? It's lovely to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing very fine too, really. It's beautiful. Our internet connects us together, that we're able to see
Mhm.
it, virtue of internet connectivity and the beauty of Zoom, to have this beautiful, amazing conversation around literature and around your body of work. So I want to say thank you very much once again for joining in.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Nicole, we are going to get into what actually inspired you to write Colors of Life, which I must say, that is such a beautiful name to give a book. That's a beautiful title name. But then you've been a writer now for some years now, and I would like to ask you how you get started into writing. What is your first creative spark as a writer? And what is that thing that fuels you in, that keeps you going in this literature journey that fuels you in to write? And also, why did you choose this title for your book as well? I think I've got a lot in that for a first starter.
Sure. So, let's see if I can answer those in chronological order. So, for the title, Colors of
Yeah.
Life, my husband actually came up with that
Oh.
originally. Yeah, for as I started kind of doing art and pursuing more of the business side, I guess, of art and taking it
Mm.
seriously, we were talking about a title for a business that would feel good. And so everybody in my family has always called me Coley, Nicole Coley.
Mm.
And so Colors of Life had a cool acronym for Coley as well.
Mm.
And then, so that was the business title. And then as I was writing this book and kind of thinking of a title, it just felt right for me as well. Both in the colors that I kind of choose for the pieces and
Mm.
in the colors of emotion that I think come through on the pages,
Mm.
and in the writing. So I think it was kind of a group effort in coming up with the title for that.
Mm. That's an amazing one, actually. That is really interesting, and I love to hear how all of this came to be. Quite interesting, really. Thank you. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing. Absolutely. And your book blends education, it blends inspiration and personal reflection. How
Mhm.
did you strike that balance writing them?
Yeah. So it's been a journey for sure. It's been a
Mm.
journey. It wasn't necessarily something that I set out to write initially.
Oh.
I had just started doing some watercolor pieces. And as I was doing my counseling sessions with clients, my
Yeah.
9 to 5 job is as a mental health counselor. It
Mm.
became apparent that there were different themes that continued to come across in variety of sessions, variety of places to be doing counseling with different clients. Um, and it became clear that like as we're all human beings on our own individual journeys and whatnot, and our own idiosyncratic experiences, we are
Absolutely.
also all learning similar lessons. And it seemed like it might be a good thing to write about since so many of us in different walks of life are struggling with the same things.
Mm. That is really amazing to hear. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And you also touched on healing from childhood trauma, managing relationship, and coping with stress. Where these themes draw from, say, for instance, personal experience, research, or both? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I would say a little bit of everything, to be honest.
Mm.
Like much of the inspiration for each of the pieces was through working with clients and again finding these themes that continue to pop up through different life
Mm,
experiences. But I would say my own journey and my own experiences with mental health are
mhm,
very much tied into the book. I think the last piece in the last page of the book kind of talks specifically a little bit more personally about how ideas in this book have saved my career, have saved my
mm,
passion for learning and for counseling, for the ability to
mm.
self-care while also trying to make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely a mixture of melding together your own personal experiences and then also knowing what tends to resonate with other people very well also.
Absolutely. I love your take on that. That is so beautiful and so interesting to know. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I'd like you to raise the book to the camera if you have a physical copy there,
Sure.
just so you can see what it looks like. Colors of
Mm-hmm.
Life. Oh, that's a
Ooh,
beautiful
kind of
cover.
blurry.
Yeah, that's a beautiful cover. Would you like to talk about the making of the cover? I love the mixture of the color. It's so sparkling and so inviting. Very
Thank you.
inviting, yeah.
This is one of the pieces. One of the pieces in the book, if I can find it. So each of the pages is a different watercolor piece, and I'm very much a color oriented person. I like things to
Oh,
be very bright and sparkly, as you said. And so that was just one of the pages that's in here. So I think it's maybe this will even show a little better. Maybe not.
oh, look at that. Who did all of these
I don't.
illustrations?
The blur on the on Zoom is not helping me out here.
Yeah, I really wish I really wish it would show very well without the blurriness. Because even with the
Yeah,
blurriness, it's so clear. I can see it on my hand. But then I can
sure.
imagine what it looks like without the zoom blurriness, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, all of the pages are pretty vibrant.
Very
I'm
vibrant.
yeah.
I now I see it resonates so well with the title, Colors of Life.
Yeah, yeah. I'm working on a second piece and I'm trying to kind of expand some of the like color palettes that I use because I tend towards
Mm.
like rainbow very frequently. So I'm trying
Oh,
to kind of challenge myself
wow.
to be a little more like devoted to a certain color scheme.
Interesting. Very interesting. Thank you. And
Mhm.
Nicole, many readers struggle to start conversations about mental health. How do you hope this book helps break down that barrier?
Yeah, so that's a huge motivator for writing this book in the first place is to have, kind of an entry point, I suppose, a
Yeah,
good entry point for people to feel more comfortable having a discussion about mental health. I'm
yeah.
so sorry. You could probably hear my dogs in the background.
No worries.
I'm staying at my brother and sister's house right now, so between my
Oh,
dogs and their dogs, there's five dogs in the house. But yeah, with conversations about mental health, I know I think just kind of taking the pulse and the temperature on
mm,
the how the social climate has changed over the last few decades. I think that we've become a little bit more comfortable with talking about mental health. As you mentioned earlier in the interview, I do work with kids in the public schools in Milwaukee, and that's something I've seen a big shift on is a little bit more comfort
mm,
and forthcoming talking about mental health. And I think that's really well done with kids. I think sometimes adults have a harder time with it. And
mm.
so part of my goal in making the book is to just kind of really straightforwardly talk about, hey, we're all experiencing this. Like we all are all struggling in different ways. We're all learning. We're all on a journey. And it's
Mm,
okay. It's okay to have a conversation about this, even when it feels uncomfortable. It's really
absolutely.
so.
Absolutely. I love your take on that. That is so important and so true and so even evident in our today's world. Quite
Mhm.
interesting. And I love how your book is coming in to bridge that gap, to bridge that
Mhm.
barrier of opening conversation about mental health because it's very, very important to have
Yes.
sometimes. A lot of people do shy away from it, but it's very, very important that we have a conversation around mental health. Absolutely
Mhm.
important. And you use the phrase colors of life, which I really,
Mhm.
really love it side of it. It sounds to me to be even poetic in nature, if you ask me. Maybe it's the poet in
Sure.
me that is speaking. But then, can you share
Sure.
what that metaphor means to you in the context of mental health, or the metaphor of colors of life means to you?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, to be honest, I think it means different things to me at different times. But the
Mm,
main message that I feel from it is that I think sometimes life can take on different color schemes. I
yeah.
don't know. I know
Mm,
when I speak with other artists, they felt this too. Artists, whether that's like, physical art media or writers, singers, any form of artist, I think that
mm,
life can kind of take on certain colors. And
absolutely.
and those change throughout the seasons, the seasons of life. And
Mm,
so I think that trying to capture that in the pages and then also in the words, that was really important to me to kind of describe like
yeah.
life is not always in the same place at the same time. A
Yeah.
lot of times, life is going to feel very vibrant and wonderful, and it's
Mm,
important for us to zoom in on that and
mm,
really love that feeling when it's happening. And then there's other times where, it feels gray and it feels dark and it feels kind of
mm,
scary.
yeah.
And as hard as it is to experience that, that's a really important part of life too. So I think
Mm.
that the metaphor kind of is supposed to, you know, pull at your heartstrings in the sense of just recognizing how life feels at different times.
Mm, I love that statement. It means different thing at a different time. That is so important because as we all live and journey through this life, there's some times where we are so amazingly engulfed in happiness, joy, beauty, laughter,
Mhm.
etc. And there are moments of gloomy days, there are moments of sadness, there are moments where we have to shed tears. It's amongst it's part of life. There's no how you say you want to try to avoid that. It just happens. It's
Yes.
and I love the way you have to use that phrase. It means different things at different times,
Mhm.
at different moment, at different, point in time, at different age, etc.
Yes.
Very
Yeah.
interesting, really, at different circumstances as well. Very
Yes.
important. I love your take on that. Very true. So evident, so real, and very crucial. So, thank you very much for these amazing answers to these lovely questions.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I also like to ask you, what was the writing process like for you while working on this book? And also, writing about mental health, sometimes, if you ask me, can be quite cathartic if you are very frank with one another and very challenging as well. Now, were
Mhm.
there any part or say certain topics or idea that you found more difficult or interesting to write about, if in any way?
Yeah. Yeah. So in terms of the process of writing the book, it definitely was slower because my normal 9 to 5 job is as a mental health counselor. So it was just kind of fitting in between when I could. And again, this wasn't really, I hadn't anticipated it becoming a book. This was
Mm,
just, my own art that I do for myself. For my own mental health. And it kind of unfolded over the past, 2 or 3 years really naturally, where I just kind of started with a couple pieces that seemed important. And
mm,
as I opened up my eyes to those themes, they kept coming, and it
mm.
became really evident like this needs to be written down and this needs to be shared with others,
Yeah,
because we're all struggling, we're all having a hard time, and I think
absolutely.
that that information is important. So it started with
Mm,
the watercolor pieces, and then as I realized it needed to become a book in order to kind of better expound on the ideas, I
mm,
started kind of jotting things down as they came up in different sessions in my own life, my own experiences. And
mm,
so it was very much an amalgam of like step by step doing the watercolor first and then,
absolutely.
um, yeah, and
Mm,
getting some prose then later on. And in terms of the topics, yeah, I think some can be a little bit more difficult to write about, um, and draw. Just like stepping on any sort of tender subject can require a little bit of grace. So for me, I think writing about some of those topics kind of required a certain headspace. There were other
Mm,
ones, like when I'm writing about joy, I can do that, pretty much at any time, as long
mm,
as I'm in a decent headspace. That
mood.
feels like a safe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And then yeah, and then writing a little bit more about, some of the grief or uncertainty or fear,
Mm,
forgiveness. Those could be hard sometimes for me. So it required, my own personal, safe place of making
mm,
sure I've got my dogs with me and some music on and, a blanket and just, creating an atmosphere where it's safe for yourself to kind of explore that at the
mm.
time.
Wow. I love your take on that. That is so interesting and so inviting. Very impressive as well. Thank you. I love your
Thank,
answers to these questions, to be frankly speaking. Very interesting answers you've provided. Thank you
thank
very
you. I
much.
appreciate that. It's
Yeah,
really
thank
fun to
you very
talk with
much
a
for
poet
sharing.
because your
You know,
your interpretation of different words and just kind of
abs
hearing your
absolutely.
turn of phrase through your speech is beautiful too.
Oh, yeah, I know that. Interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to ask you, Nico, because healing is often a long and non-linear journey. What encouragement would you give to somebody who feels stuck in their process of healing? Hmm.
Yeah, that comes up quite often in
Hmm.
counseling sessions and in
Conversations.
different topics and different journeys. I think
Hmm.
a few of the main pieces that I've learned, and that I write about in the book is, I think first off, a really important one is that healing doesn't feel the way that we expect it to all of the time. I think
Hmm.
when people come to counseling sessions, they expect it to be, just when they think of the idea of healing, it sounds very, soft and gentle and,
Hmm.
comfy and it is sometimes, but
Immediate.
it's also often not.
Hmm.
And I think people expect healing to feel good, and a lot of times it does, but having a feeling of discomfort or fear or not being certain or feeling like you're not very brave, that's all a part of the healing process. So I think
Hmm.
if you are in a place of uncertainty or you are feeling stuck, that's a space in healing that is, it needs to be honored. It needs to be valued and recognized for where it is. The other thing that I would say, and I speak about this in the book too, is that the presence of healing, the presence of, adding in skill, adding in habit, learning things. I think we forget about the process of unlearning. And I think
Hmm.
people forget to give themselves credit for unlearning the things that are
Hmm.
preventing healing. I think with that
Absolutely.
perspective, it's easier to see the progress you've made when it feels like you haven't made any.
Yeah. Oh, wow. These amazing, great responses you provided. Very true. I love your take on that. And some people, most people would expect healing, especially when it comes to things of this nature and topic. They expect healing to be an instant thing, something that they're gonna
Mhm.
get quite quickly,
Yeah.
something immediate. You're going for counseling. Oh, I want to be healed. You get there afterward.
Mhm.
You're expecting that you're going to be healed immediately as you get home,
Mhm.
as you're going to speak to this person. Once you leave the office, everything should get sorted out. But it often takes a very long and non-linear journey. It takes a while.
Yes.
It's just like you have a wound somewhere that is burning, a wound somewhere. It might not be physical, it could be a mental wound, it could be an emotional
Yeah.
wound that could be there, and it takes
Yeah.
time for it to get healed. And you mentioned forgiveness.
Yes.
The healing sometimes can come through forgiveness, through letting go, by not holding
Mhm.
back, it takes a lot that goes into the making of this conversation. Very interesting
Mhm.
and quite amazingly. And sometimes just like you have a physical wound, but you have a wound in the heart that also needs to be
Yes.
healed. Both of them takes different methods. You take drugs to have, some wounds to be healed. There are some things that you may
Sure.
have to do physically to have some emotional wounds to be healed as well. Going to therapy, doing certain things you love,
Yes.
speaking to somebody. So many things actually. Your topic is such an interesting one. Very, very crucial and
Yeah.
very important, especially in our current world today, the 21st century current world
Yes.
today.
Yeah, we're feeling that right about now.
Absolutely. It's so much in the
Yeah,
hair flying up about, to be fair.
yeah,
Flying up
yeah,
about.
absolutely.
I love your answers to these questions. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I wanted to ask you a very interesting question that just popped up in my head now. While
Mhm.
did you discover anything new about yourself while writing Colors of Life?
So, because this was such a long process,
Mm,
it's taken me probably to between the drawing and the painting and the writing and the publishing, it's probably been about 2 to 3 years. So I think within anybody's lifespan of 2 to 3 years, I hope we're all discovering things.
wow.
I think a couple things were important for me to discover on the way. One that I think I'll talk about more in my future book
Mm,
is a thing that I've learned about myself that I can kind of struggle to take the next step if I'm not feeling like totally ready.
mm,
And so for me, it's been a change of my perspective on the word brave and the
mm,
feeling of bravery. And I came to realize that, being brave doesn't necessarily mean feeling brave.
mm,
Often it means acting or moving forward or using your voice even while you feel afraid. And that's
mm,
usually when we're the most brave. So I think for me, even getting to the point of publishing and getting to the point of feeling comfortable talking to other people about my writing and my art,
mm,
and putting so much of myself in pages and then presenting it for others' eyes and readership and judgment,
yeah.
and value. I think
Mm,
that has been a huge process of learning to redefine my feeling of brave. And
mm,
then I think the second thing that I learned, and that again I talk about, I believe in the preface of the book, is that the book reads differently at different times in your
mm,
life.
mm,
And I wrote it intentionally to be that way.
mm,
But this year, I had the opportunity to experience that myself. So, for example, both of my grandparents, my mother's parents, passed away earlier in the year,
mm,
and I had really great relationships with them. In fact, they were a huge part of my love for art and writing. And they passed away earlier in the year. My grandma, before she could read my book, but my grandpa got to.
wow.
Um, and so, rereading my pieces on grief, when I was actively in grief versus when I
Mm,
had written when I wasn't, it was a good reminder and humbling of this book is going to feel different at different times.
mm,
It's supposed to reflect where you're at. So I would say that's another thing that I learned is just to always be grateful and open to the opportunity of experience,
mm,
knowing that any given day it's going to be something different.
mm. Oh, wow. Very important and so interesting. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And I wanted to ask you now, because there's this lovely way I love to ask authors, because when it comes to writing, we've produced an artwork. It's left for the viewers, for the readers to
Mhm.
interpret it in their own sort of ways, according to
Mhm.
how it suits them or how it, how they love it. Now,
Sure.
sometimes some readers will get the message that the author intended. Sometimes they might be close to getting the message. Sometimes you find some readers, even though the writing is so clear and distinct, they'll still sometimes
Sure.
misunderstand the book and interpret it upside down. I wanted to ask you, has there be any scenario of that nature? How do you feel when readers interpret your work differently than what you intended? And also, I wanted to ask you, which has been your most favorite feedback that you've gotten so far since the book has been published? If there's a particular one you can remember, oh, somebody said this about the book, and I was intrigued with that, and that was so
Mhm.
satisfying for me, and I really love that. We love to hear.
Sure. So yeah, for the first question, the I think it was because I wrote the book intentionally to be fairly open-ended. It's supposed to kind of be an accompaniment on your own journey in life.
Mm,
I
Mm,
don't know that there is a wrong way to interpret.
mm,
From some of the readers that I've had read it, I definitely see how some pages they take something away that I didn't, really glom onto or
yeah,
really adhere to.
yeah.
And I think that's the point.
Mm,
I think the way that I wrote it is that I want certain pages to jump out at you more than others because it's
mm,
reflective of where you're at in your
mm,
life journey at that time. So for me, what I had just mentioned with my example with my grandparents, when I had initially, like my first read through after I got it back, I wasn't in a place of grief. And so those pages weren't jumping out at me. I still read them, they still felt valuable, but they weren't jumping out at me. Whereas my
mm,
next read through, after my grandparents had passed away, it was a moment where I kind of had to catch my breath and take a moment to kind of process the experience of
mm,
that. And so when I have people who are reading and they find something different or different interpretations or they learn different lessons, I it's a huge honor for me to
mm,
see how other people's minds take the words that you give
mm,
and run with them and experience them in different ways. So
mm.
I think it's wonderful when people interpret it differently and then you get to see how other people's points of view can open your own.
Mm. Oh, wow. Interesting. I love your take on that.
Thank you.
Now,
And then if I'm remembering
favorite.
correctly, you said
Yeah, the
you said the
favorite
second question is
response.
about feedback. Um, yeah, let me think. I think the greatest pieces of the most meaningful feedback that I've gotten so
Mm,
far has been from like friends of friends. So not necessarily people that you would have expected to reach out
yeah.
necessarily. And that's how I feel like I can see the impact and the ripple effect of words and art and community. I think those are the
Mm,
pieces of feedback that have been the most important. For
mm,
example, without disclosing too much, I've had a couple like family members of friends who were going through their own grief, and they through my friends or coworkers or whatnot, they texted me and just said like, thank you for these words. I didn't know how much I needed to hear them right now. And I
mm,
feel like somebody else understands. I guess if I was going to distill down the most important piece of feedback and the one that means the most to me, it's just when somebody feels like they're not alone because of what they're reading.
mm. Wow. I love that. That is so beautiful and so interesting. Sometimes when we get feedback as authors for our writing, it is such a beautiful feeling, especially when somebody says something glamorous about it. Oh,
Yeah.
it reminds me of certain point in my life. Oh, that was amazing. You made me shed a couple tears. Oh, that was really healing for me. It gives this kind of unsatiable joy, this huge
Hmm.
satisfaction and contentment that comes from
Yeah.
that. Recently I got a feedback and I was like, oh my God, your message melts my heart.
Yes.
That's the statement I made. And I never I sent the email that your message melts my heart. And
Hmm.
later on I was like, oh, I hope that's the right phrase to say. Then I went to
Yeah.
ask ChatGPT, what does it mean when I say your message melts my heart? I'm just trying to make sure that that statement
Sure.
wasn't rude or I did say the wrong thing.
Sure.
They just told me that that statement means that you were touched by their message, and the message was
Hmm.
so. I was like, oh yeah, that's it. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You got it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's such an amazing, satisfactory feeling. To be fair, and I love it
Yeah.
wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I think that just that idea of connection, I think, is so
Mm,
beautiful with art in any form, whether that's writing or music or some of the pictorial arts. I think it's this idea of connection is so stunning. I remember being maybe like a freshman or a sophomore in college, and I was taking a like an early literature course, and I remember reading Sappho, some of her poetry, and just like having to take a breath and thinking like this person who existed centuries before now, she knows what I'm going through, and I know what she's going through because these words connect us. I just think that idea of
absolutely.
connection is the basis of all art.
Absolutely. The idea of connection is the basis of all art. Very important, very true, very vivid. Oh, interesting. This is fantastic. Thank you very much, Nicole, for these amazing answers to these questions. And just apart from Colors of Life, do you have any
Mhm.
other works that you've authored or say currently working on? And also, do you see yourself writing more books in this genre in the future, if in any way?
I believe I have one more picture to paint, and then I'm
Interesting.
done with the paintings for the second version of this book, or the second, I don't know, I forget what they call it, volume. You can tell I'm a new author. But for the second volume of the book, I've got one more picture left to paint. I haven't started the writing for that, so yeah, I'll have at least one more of these books. I think I might
Wow.
take a little break for a while after, because I want to make
Mm,
sure that each piece is distinct and
yeah,
meaningful. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, and also that you know, that I'm present for my clients, and I'm present
Yeah,
for my, you know, daily job. It's
readers.
been really interesting
Yeah,
to try to navigate doing all of it.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah. So yeah, I'll have some more coming out in the near future. I also am toying around with the idea of kind of trying some more themed books in the future. So,
Mm,
for example, I do the growth mindset program with the schools that I work in.
yeah.
And I was thinking of kind of, you know, merging a similar format of book with the combination of art and prose, but
Mm,
having some more focus. So, for example, a book focusing on young parenting, or a book
mm,
focusing on growth mindset, navigating school. I know one that was
yeah.
huge for me was as an athlete transitioning away from super competitive sports
Mm,
into college. That was a huge identity crisis. So you know,
wow.
learning to navigate identity shifts. I think that's there's rich material there for, I think, a lot
Mm,
of different genres of book.
absolutely. Interesting. That is really fantastic. I love your take on this. Quite interesting and quite awesome. And just in case we have some viewers who are currently watching this interview and would love to get a copy of Colors of Life, on what platform is it available on for purchase?
Sure. So if you search it by the book number or the title and my name, it comes up
Yeah.
with a bunch of different options. I like to kind of promote some of the smaller sellers and whatnot. So I
Yeah.
really like thriftbooks.com. That's one that I'm a really big fan of, just buying my books on normally. Also abebooks.com. That's another one. If there are any college students listening, those are both really good websites to try to get cheaper books on. That's how I found them in
Oh,
college.
wow.
um, and then let's see what else is there. It's Thrift Books, Abe Books. It's on Barnes and Noble, and then also Amazon and Walmart. If you can't
Mm.
get them at the smaller places.
Yeah. First checking through the smaller places before you go to the bigger because those
Yeah,
guys are very big. They have a lot of customers
yeah.
every now and then. Yeah. So I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Nicole Otto's books directly on Barnes& and Nobles, on Thrift, and all of the other sites mentioned, and also on our website. I also left a link to Nicole's social media pages for possible followings. So thank you so much, Nicole, for sitting down with me, joining me in this amazing, vibrant, beautiful, soul molding conversation. And I want to say it's so beautiful that we can have this amazing conversation around the making of Colors of Life. Very impressive, very interesting, and I'm so impressed by your answers and description of this book. So thank you very much for joining in
Thank you.
today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and getting the opportunity to talk about literature and art and the things we love.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure as well.